everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Richard Lewis Show. Joining me, incredibly, for the first time in any official interviewing capacity, is Alex Machine Richardson, host extraordinaire, now a commentator. He's quit. He's quit hosting. I'm sure we're going to talk about why. But he's joining me from a hotel in Germany. You can tell that's not his natural setup at home. That's not his mirror. So, looking good. I appreciate you joining me, especially because I know you've had to go to great pains just to even find a webcam and everything. So, well done, mate.
Yeah. Shout out to Chaddy B, coming in clutch. I was having a breakdown about an hour before our call, and Chad Birchall comes to the rescue as always. He's basically my father.
Mate, he's fucking useless as well. I did something with him not that long ago and had to talk him through it. He couldn't get his audio started for 30 minutes. The one thing that it's taught me is there are a lot of boomers in, like boomer mindsets in esports. Like, this is a tech industry. You're supposed to know what you're doing.
Yeah, we were just talking about the fact it's funny that everyone else has now got like the swankiest setups with the ring lights and the 4K webcams, and I do feel like that is, I'm definitely dragging my heels at that one. I've barely got a functional gamer setup at home.
Well, look, it's great to have you on board, and as I said, we've never done anything like this together, for a variety of reasons. Obviously, back in the day, I mean, shit, man, we used to travel to and from events. I remember being stranded in an airport with you once. I think that was in Cologne. That was a lot of fun, just sitting on suitcases and for fucking 16 hours or whatever it was.
Is it weird that I missed that? Is it weird that I'm now?
I don't know. I think it may be. I don't think so, actually. I think esports was a lot more fun back then.
Yeah,
it
felt like a traveling circus with my mates talking about a video game, all just kind of living this like dream. And now it's like, actually, it's work, it's video games.
Yeah, and I think as well, though, the kind of like, it's good that the standards for us have gone up in terms of you get a better hotel, the rates are better, you're a bit more prestigious, but equally what comes with that is all that expectation for you behaviorally. You've got to be completely perfect. You have to live like a celebrity lifestyle.
Without any of the celebrity
but
perks.
exactly. So we don't have celebrity level perks, but we do have to have like a celebrity level of behavior. There's that expectation on us. So that's kind of why I feel like esports sucks a bit now. It's like I do miss the good old days.
Yeah, I think it was like, it's like the internet as well. Like when it was just like this, when it was only full of the early adopters and the people that were super hyper interested in it, to the point of like obsession. Everyone's just like, dude, this is insane. I can't believe what I've discovered here. And then when all those people were there, it was like the super peak moment where it hasn't been, put through the ringer of grubby hands. And it's kind of pure, to an extent. Like me and Lauren just going to an iSeries and casting COD 4, I'm pretty sure just for the university hall's accommodation being covered, like that was and for some reason that was just great. You had almost thousands of people all there for the same reason.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice. It was nice when it was small, and as well, like everybody who was at those events back in the day, they were community members. Like I think calling the esports a community now, with it being so big and so ubiquitous, I think that's like this, a little bit disingenuous. But back in the day, anyone who was at an iSeries, you probably knew them from online anyway. You probably knew them from a forum or from playing in a league or a ladder. It felt a lot more, because of the comparative size, it felt a lot more together and cohesive, right?
Yeah, dude. Like you'd leave with like 10 new Xfire friends, and then you'd end up murking for them. And dude, I know. I lost all of my screenshots. I'm actually really mad. Like I didn't bother saving them just to see like for my pre-invite applications. Just wanted to see what screenshots I'd take.
Look, you're currently working. Well, you're between events at the moment. You are a commentator these days, or a caster, as we like to say, after being a host for many, many years. And I think you've kind of just had a moment that's kind of like put you over the top in the eyes of the community, what with the ESL Pro League finals and the Cadian Clutch in particular. I want to, because I know you're quite, I don't want to use the word insecure, but very introspective and self-analytical, let's say. How's the journey been, the transition to commentary, and how does it feel to have so many people say that, you know, you and Chad are the best duo out there right now?
I mean, it's kind of surreal. So I don't know how many people know that I was a caster before. You know,
Yeah.
I know a lot of kind of just, you know, surface level fans will have seen me at a desk for a couple of years. Then they'll be like, hey, that's the guy that used to do the desk. And that's kind of where it stops. But like my break in esports was casting COD 4 for fun, and then casting COD 4 for fun and a little bit of money, to the point where eventually, through nepotism and my own achievements, was given a path to ESL, you know, and given an opportunity. And I casted Battlefield 4 and bloody League of Legends and Skill Special Forces 2 and
I was going to say, and some games no one's ever fucking heard of.
Oh, I think my favorite was a Gamescom gig I managed to get right at the start of my career, where I was casting, I think it was like a new Sam Fisher, what's the one, you know, where you had the goggles. Thank you. Yeah, Splinter Cell multiplayer, and I'm shouting about ninjas on the Gamescom floor. But yeah, I did my fair share and ended up kind of, you know, being channeled into hosting and succeeding at that, to the point where I didn't really get to take a shot at casting. And the fact that the stars have aligned to the point where I'm giving it a go and doing it my way, which is something I always felt like, you know, whenever I'd listen to other people cast, I'd be like, damn, that's good, but I'd have said this, you know. And being able to have an opportunity to genuinely try and succeed to the extent of not ruining in a crazy clutch moment, that's always a good place to start.
Yeah, and it's kind of strange. I mean, because obviously you're good friends with Henry, and I live with him, if I'm correct.
Just spent 10 days with him in Malta.
Yeah. Well, of course, obviously he's been drowning his sorrows lately. He's
well, we had a party. What can I say? You know, we put the projector on, had a few bevies.
Yeah, he's down the job center now.
Yeah, he's on the dole soon.
Yeah, but you obviously live with him, very good friends, known him many years. In for a long period of time, him and Sadakist were considered the #1 duo, one of the greatest duos in any esport at all. And now you and Chad are kind of getting that accolade. Henry doesn't want to come back to casting, but I do wonder if there's a little bit like looking over from him and going, yeah, I could still be doing that, really, but it's okay. It's not, you know. Is there any of that there?
I mean, not to speak for him, but I do think the sentiment is pretty strong that, like, you know, he can admire it. He certainly could do it. It's not like he hasn't lost the ability. We still get a bit wavy and commentate games, you know, for fun, just to, you know, for a couple of rounds, having a bit of a laugh. He's still got it for sure. I just think he feels like it's, you know, he's done with that. That's you know, completed it, mate, for lack of a better summary. And I think there's, you know, everyone gets to that point in a career where you kind of, you feel like you're at the top of the ladder, and you kind of look around, you know, all the players have met it, you see the coaches, etc. Everyone goes through that. I think he's done that, even though, you know, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't remiss that we didn't get to make that triple cast thing a bit more. You know, like, dude, I've honestly felt like we were forging a whole new path for like esports productions. Like, we have a host, a charismatic analyst, and a bit of a wild card tattooed hunk, you know, and here we are, we've got 3 very different personalities and voices, and we were doing the whole show, and it was received well for, you know, for the pandemic 12-hour stints for weeks on end. I really wish we'd have been able to take that to an arena and give it a couple of blasts with that, you know. I think we were doing that delicate dance of not stepping on anyone's toes and it sounding natural, which is very hard with 3 voices.
And what about is there any you know, input or rivalry, any discussion about your respective crafts? Because the reason I ask is and we'll get into this aspect of it in depth in a bit, but you know, I do notice increasingly that it's all fine and dandy when you work on a broadcast in a kind of complementary thing. You know, if I'm hosting, you're casting, Chad's analyzing, and we're not intruding on anyone's particular you know, skill sets or anything like that. But suddenly when someone starts doing what you do, even if you've always been good friends and had a good relationship, I think sometimes because of the nature of the ego it requires to be broadcast talent, you start looking over and going, yeah, they're good and everything, but like, you know, I'm the best, obviously. And it can create a little bit of friction, I think, even if you're not necessarily cognizant of it.
I think it's a genuine nature of the beast, and I think you know, you have to catch yourself and make sure you're framing it correctly for a healthy mindset, because I think everyone does it. I mean, of course, make no mistake, there's so few people that do your job. When you're listening to someone else do your job, you are going to be hyper aware of the differences, the similarities. You know, when I was first starting and listening to other casters, do you know how easy it is to say, oh, he's stolen my line? You know, like this bullshit, like this nonsense in your head, which is just because, yeah, you found something like, what did I used to say? Gets the tag, but not the frag, right? Like the way it sounded, used to say it when I was 16. And then whenever I heard someone else say it, you know, I couldn't just process in my tiny little pea brain that someone else has said the same thing and had the same revelation I have, that you can get a tag and not the frag, and you can put them together, throw in a body bag, have fun with it, you know? Like I'm not the first person to do that. I won't be the last, but just being able to confront your ego on each one of those, I think helps you keep it healthy, because the truth is everyone's winging it, and as long as they're trying to do it their way, I think that's my main issues with it is when it sounds like someone's trying to emulate as opposed to innovate.
Yeah, I think you do find that sometimes, you know, because there's an attitude, I think, that people don't seem to realize why somebody's successful in our business. So what they do is they invariably go, "Oh, Machine's successful. It must be because he sounds like this and he talks like this at this pace and he uses these phrases, and so I'm going to try and sound like him." You know, and I think one of the mistakes I see a lot of up and coming commentators kind of fall into, especially the commentators, is they don't have their own unique voice. They're desperately trying to sound like something else, whatever it might be.
Do you know a perfect example of, like, if we were having this as, oh, this is a perfect opportunity to do it, is if you are a caster that perhaps is falling into those footfaults, take a look at Tosspot and realize that dude did it was the first to be doing it entirely his way. No one casts quite like him. He was clearly a lot of the old football influences and everything else, and it was, you know, by product of his lack of knowledge about the game, he had to do it a certain way at times. But dude, like, the amount of times I've wanted to throw a sensational in, like just to feel what he felt when he was ripping a sense. This is sensation. Like no one can stretch 4 words as long as he can, and he would do it so consistently, and it sounds so good. It's like, that's why you want to find your own style, because that guy was doing it before anyone else.
Yeah, but this is the thing, isn't it? It's like you end up in this kind of crazy world where you have to do something unique to stand out from the crowd, and in doing so, you invariably become divisive, right? I mean, I think
fair, yeah.
I think the problem always is, if you do something unique and innovative, it's going to go over with some people, but it's not going to chime well with some other people. And now suddenly you're in the mad world of, well, what do I do? Because do I go with what feels right for me and some people like it? Or do I try and be a bit more vanilla and dial it down a little bit to appeal to a broader base? And yeah, I mean, like, it seems crazy to me to say it, but there are people out there who don't like Anders, don't like Semler, don't like Moses, you know, like, and then certainly if we go back to the greats, a lot of people, I remember at the time, a lot of people were like, wow, Tosspot's all fake hype. It's like, well, first of all, fake hype is a tool that we have to use. And second of all, if you knew Stu, it's not fake. He just was like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's like the most soft-spoken human being in the world. So when he's excited, the fact you really should be enjoying that with him. But yeah, not to just circle jerk Tosspot. That's a really interesting conversation, because, you know, I think that I hadn't said or thought that out loud. The idea of it, if you are trying to innovate, there is going to be an element of being divisive, and there will be a division. And I think that that's something I've been working through these last couple of years, even with the desk hosting, just accepting that I'm going to try and be more myself, more genuine, which is, it's funny how the correlation between trying to be more honest about who I am at work and my success, they kind of correlate upward together. But I do think it's a double-edged sword, because it means it hurts even harder when someone has an issue with your divisive, like, God, I'm talking for 8 hours at a time. I hate myself, like listening to the highlights when we sit down in the green room, they've got yesterday's casting on and it's all the same tone, and I'm like, God, this guy's such a twat. But it's always going to happen, especially in the quantity of which you deliver it. But I do think it's an interesting one, and I don't have the answer of like how you can accept that there are going to be people, the more genuine you become, and the more it goes both ways. People will appreciate it and have more respect and or admiration for it, but there'll also be people that are like, this dude's so weird, like, who is this guy? And you just won't connect in that level. And I think that happens, doesn't that happens, you used a fancy word, ubiquitously. I don't think I'm using it right, but you know, that happens universally, right?
Yeah. I think that it's a bit of a weird spot that you have to be in when you're on air, because I think some feedback can be valuable, but I think the overwhelming majority is useless because people don't know what they're talking about. And I think you have to really get into a headspace where you need to take feedback from your peers and the people who work on a show. And even if you don't agree with it, if they're saying the broadcast will be better for this purpose and it's going to make everybody feel better, sometimes you have to rein yourself in and maybe do something that you don't agree with for the benefits of the broadcast. But I think in general, when it comes to this idea of like community feedback, I hate it when I see commentators or any broadcast talent or any personality really do a Reddit thread. Hey guys, just want to know what you guys think. Like, fuck what they think. Like for real. You know, it's like it's pandering at that point, and you're not going to get anything useful from the peanut gallery. That's just the truth of it.
But I think there is a big issue, and it's, you know, it's such an easy fault for anyone to fall into, where, you know, you become a caricature of yourself because you are constantly positively reinforced when you do something out of the norm, right? Because of the way the Reddit works, because of the way Twitter works, something that stands out. You know, you've made a weird animal sound and it's gone, and everyone's like, oh my God, ha ha ha. You're like, okay, that, you know, even if it's happening just like Pavlovian in the background, you're going to start doing it more, right? And I think that's how people can fall into the traps of just becoming an over the top, overzealous caricature of their casting. And I think everyone falls into that trap to some extent.
Yeah, and the reality as well is, though, it's like the nature of how that feedback works. It's so fleeting and temporary because the audience don't self-reflect to the degree we do. So I've never seen anyone go, oh, I used to like Machine, and then I didn't, and now I don't like Machine a year later, but I realized that's just because familiarity breeds contempt, and it's something that's changed in my mind. It's not an indictment of how he does his job. I'd love to read that Reddit post because
I'd be hitting that up arrow so fast, dude.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice if people could recognize that you're not, generally, I think you're not supposed to listen to someone religiously for a year, for 12 hours at a time. You're going to pick up on all their little idiosyncrasies. You're going to pick up on all the little quirks of speech, the way the recurring phrases. And it's going to become tedious, but not because what they're doing is inherently bad. It's just because there is a limited lexicon that we use in any sport. And if you hear it repeatedly, you're going to get agitated because people don't like repetition.
Yeah, I had one, you know, like the verbal crutches, right? You get them ever so often. And I had one recently. Someone tweeted me in the middle of a Pro League cast. Someone tweeted me saying, "Can you stop saying every fucking kill is crucial? It's not all crucial. Nothing's crucial." And as soon as I got that tweet, like I got a little triggered, I'll be honest. But that I started the whole cast. I started catching just how many times I was saying crucial, and I'm just inside my own head, and I'm like, "Oh, and that's it's important. And I'm just, and you realize how, you know, we in this job, it's all kind of unspoken, just jumbled word vomit. But you do have crutches that you will lean on in the same way a freestyle rapper. I listen to a lot of freestyle rap to gain like inspiration, and I listen to Juice WRLD. He does like a full 60-minute freestyle on what's his name, the famous DJ from the UK. But either way, he does a full 60-minute freestyle. Westwood, thank you, Tim Westwood, yeah. And he does a 60-minute freestyle. It sounds like a whole album. It's all off the dome. You can tell he does it behind Eminem beats. But the point I'm making is that throughout that whole thing, you start by the end of the 60 minutes seeing what he comes back to while he's piecing together his next verse. And so everyone, when you are doing something that's this kind of vocal off the cuff, I don't know what else, impromptu, a little bit improv-y, isn't it? What we do. I think everyone has those bad habits, and
not to mention Phil. right? I mean, you know,
oh god,
not like
Masters of Phil during the pandemic.
Yeah, you know, people don't realize that you go into a game as a caster, and I can speak to this a little bit because I've done it as well. You know, that's where I started. You go into a game, you don't know what's going to happen. You generally, if you've done your research, you have some storylines. I used to write little gags and jokes before I used to do a cast. Like if there was a play on words for a particular name, I would make a note of that.
Yeah,
and
nice.
and I would take those in, and I'd be like, I'm going to sprinkle this somewhere in the broadcast to give it a bit of flavor.
Sure.
And then you do what happens in the game can be anything, you know. It's like you don't know if you're going to get a good performance from the favorites. You don't know if you're going to get a insane performance from the underdogs. You don't know if one player is going to pop off. So it's literally all improvisational. And then on top of that, there's a timeout. There's a tech timeout. Someone's PC crashes. Now suddenly, well, we've got 15 minutes where I have to talk absolute bollocks, entertaining bollocks, with my co-commentator about anything and everything to try and keep it vaguely relevant, while an audience is sort of screeching silently through the kind of like cosmos at me because they think I'm in charge of the game.
Yes, or that we've actually pressed a button and said, yeah, no, sorry, 10 more minutes, we haven't finished. Yeah, no, 10 more minutes, just tell the admin. Thank you. Yeah.
And the worst part about that is you might not even get to finish the anecdote you start. You know, you might be telling something really cool that's relevant to the game from back in the day, and oh no, we fixed the tech problem super quick. Right back into it. Fuck your anecdote. So yeah, it's people don't realize that you are gonna need recurring phrases. You are going to need those verbal crutches you talk about. It's the only way you can do narrative commentary, and because not every line can be a fucking iconic call.
Here's a quandary for you, Richard. A recent caster quandary I've been trying to piece together, because it happened with this VP comeback where they did the most insane comeback on Dust 2, if you'll remember. But just trying to work out when, on a comeback that seems impossible, you start shifting the dialogue from where have Virtus Pro been to here come Virtus Pro. You know, like it's actually super fucking hard because you'd have no idea. It could end next round. It could every time that 15-3 or whatever it was, every round could be the last round. So at what point do you change the framing to what a dominant performance from X to can Y do it? And like you're going to piss people off whenever you start it, whether it's too late, too early, you know, it's all
not to
stab
mention,
in the dark.
Generally, when you're in those positions, when say someone's at match point, but then a comeback starts happening, how often does it just end up being 16-14? So
bingo.
Yeah, the team falls at the last hurdle. So all that
you look like a twat.
Yeah, all that hype and everything you've built up for the potential comeback. Like you say, you look like a twat. You don't get the story. But I think, right, and this is something Sadikist used to do really well. You have to be willing to look like a twat and set the stage. So if it does happen, iconic moment. And case in point, getting back to Cadian. Yeah,
dude, I'm so okay. You are good at this. You are a good interviewer. You know, smart boy, smart cookie. This one
done this before,
dude,
mate.
Yeah, I'm not trying to patronize, by the way. I'm just weird.
No, don't worry, mate.
Cadian clutch, dude, because I've been saying this recently. I was talking to the guys and I was saying something that Matt does. We were listening to his old cast, and after we were in the green room a couple of weeks ago, maybe even a couple of months, I was like, something Matt always did was he would ramp well ahead of where I'm comfortable ramping. Like, and I was like, dude, that's what makes his cast so good. We were watching a clip on Inferno, and before he'd even got the first frag, he was already like, if it goes to 100, he was already turning it up to like 65. And the Cadian clutch, I was like, that was the first time I've tried a Sadikist style ramp, as in literally after the first, he gets the knife kill, I immediately say, what if he does it though? And then my tone changes. I start raising the decibels far more than I'm comfortable with. Normally I'd wait until we've seen the first 3 kills before I start going, this is something now, and acknowledging it. He just fucking puts his foot pedal to the metal, and when it does pay off, the payoff is, you know, huge.
And that's what you have to remember is that what's going to be complained about in the short term isn't what's going to be remembered in the long term. What's going to be remembered in the long term is when you nail those iconic moments, when you get the snacks. It's the Big Apple and Snacks is hungry, those moments. Because, you know, imagine if Snacks doesn't make that clutch and he set that up. He looks like a mega twat.
Dude, but I'll tell you, the dopamine that was flooding into his brain as he says, the Big Apple and Snacks is hungry, and he starts killing people. Once he's got the first 2, like, semi-erect.
Yeah, of course. And so I think that's kind of, it's a mad world you have to occupy, because you have to be willing to be the fool almost, that, you know, you're trying to tell a story, but it's not being written by you. You're playing catch up. You know, it's being written by someone else, and they're handing you the pages, and you're trying to add some spice to it, and then they go, right, and there's the plot twist right at the end, and now you look like a dickhead because you thought it was going one way and it went another.
But it is such a wide, isn't it? It's like there is very few of jobs like it, and I'm sure as you've experienced commentary, right? Like there is something so. I see Scrawny tweeting lustfully, you know, wistfully about how he's got a long time before his next cast, because it is such a rush when you are actually engrossed in a story and given the responsibility of storyteller, and genuinely be able to express your excitement for the moment as it happens, with everyone else riding the wave of the game and your excitement, you know, combined into this beautiful, like, Jesus Christ, it is, as someone that is chasing dopamine all the time, that is like, I'm most focused when I'm at work. Like that is, it's insane how good that can feel. Is just, it's very fulfilling in all the right facets. And then, but it also is like the post-event blues when you just disconnect from that constant 4-hour stimulus.
But then this brings us to the other big sort of thing I wanted to talk about, which was, you know, I understand a little bit of why people would want to go and be the commentator over, say, the host. And I want to know if this is true for you, because I think when you're the host, you shine. It's like you're the guy pulling the strings, you know, behind the scenes. Like no one really knows what you're doing. You have to kind of put your personality to one side. You don't get to make the intelligent points. You have to kind of set everyone else up to do that. And so what your job suddenly becomes as when you're a host is, I know what's in your head as an analyst. And I need to get that out. And I think if I ask this combination of questions, we will get it, and we'll get some gold from you. But the gold doesn't come from me. I've mined it from another source, perhaps, but you'll never sort of get any of the credit. And because of that, I think a lot of people, they don't enjoy the host role.
Yeah, it is a thankless job, but it is one that requires, you know, like, I think to be done super well, it requires a lot of, you know, the way you're doing this interview is like, it's driven by like research and social intelligence, right? You know, it's this combination of being aware of the person, the way in which they'll react, the way in which they'll be most comfortable expressing their opinion, and being able to like do this very quick and subtle dance of, you know, at its highest level, being able to have someone express their opinion and knowing that you'll be able to turn to your left and have someone argue against that opinion through their own, and just being able to stand in the middle and let that all happen. That's the beauty of it all. But it also just being a conduit with production, like, dude, that is you know, you're always going to be the
controller,
the bearer of bad news. Yeah, you've got, and having someone scream in your ears, brackets, and then the brackets don't come up and you look like a tit and you end up saying fucking shit show and it's a nightmare. You know, that those parts of it can be the most frustrating, as well as, of course, the fact that you dip in for 15 minutes, then lie idle, and like, you have to be attentive but not using energy, and make sure you have something to say. Like, I have truly watched triple, if not quadruple, the actual rounds of Counter-Strike that I did as a desk host since I've become a commentator. Because I, you know, like, just I'm learning about the game live. When Chad Birchall bloody hits me with one of his bangers, and I genuinely am like, oh shit, this makes sense. They're so smart and better at this game than me. And being able to do that, as opposed to it being a kind of an artificial, give me that point, it's night and day. Even just watching the game, talking about the game every single round, as opposed to it being just something on in the corner of the green room.
So was that then why you wanted to make the move? Because I think let's be real. In the grand scheme of things, the equivalent to being the front man of a band is being a commentator of a very popular esport. You know, the host is like the fucking bassist or something, you know. Like,
that's fair.
We don't even get to be the drummers.
Yeah, no, we feel, well, we do provide rhythm, but yeah, I'd argue the interviewers are doing that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, was that the reason for the move? Like you talked about Henry earlier. Well, yeah, because I think, you know, we're going to talk about ego, and we all have it. If we do this, you have to. If you talk into a camera for a living, you can't not have an ego. To even be there in the first place, you have to believe you have something to say, and that. Trust me, we know people whose egos are out of control. We know people who probably don't have enough of an ego compared to
there's a healthy, like, and I'm no psychologist, but from my understanding, there's a healthy ego, right? There is a healthy ego, and there is, like, from my understanding, you know, the id, which is all of the childhood giblies and everything else that we've that inform our character subconsciously primarily, and you know, the battle of the ego and the id is incorporating parts of that and accepting parts of the id, and you get a healthy shadow. And someone else talked about that that's smarter than me, but like, I'm definitely hyper aware that you have to have a degree of self-confidence and conviction behind your opinion that I think, you know, I definitely didn't have. I managed to skate through with a stick up my bum just doing the run of show for sure. But that's something that I've carved very slowly out into the public eye of that. The kind of the more I've grown to understand, you know, like I at times I was asking my questions like, can you be a self-aware narcissist? Is that a thing? You know, because you know, I have confidence. I have to have confidence in my ability. I'm a freelancer. Like, obviously I have to be, there's a competitive element that has to be within me, but also, you know, is every self-confident thought make you a bad person? Am I being critical of others, in, you know, putting others down internally to build myself up? How does this all work? It's all part of the attempt at humanity we're all going through.
Yeah. So I mean, for you, was there a little bit of that? Because I think personally, in terms of what you've achieved with the hosting role, I think that the phrase you used about Henry was, you know, completed it. You probably could lay claim to that because, you know, you've done Dota, you've done League, done CS, you've done all the biggest events in those. You've done a variety of other esports as well. But, you know, those are the big standout ones. You seem to be a go-to guy where if for any reason an endemic, let's say, host for a game isn't available, the names that are going to get called up are going to be like you, Golden Boy, and Shocks. You're the three hosts that transcend the game and don't come with any baggage in the same way that, you know, I might. I can't go and do a Dota major.
Sure.
Yeah. So what, when you've got that, and it's amazing, and you know, that's like a level of achievement few people get, to walk away from that in the eyes of the community, in the eyes of the average fan, would seem insane.
I think it's you're bang on, and I think I was definitely projecting a little with the Henry completed it, mate, because that's there as well for me. It got to the point where I would go and do a brand new game, use you know, the Rocket League gig you gave me, and I'd show up, I'd be able to do it, but obviously the genuine intrigue wasn't as real, and I'd be able to go through the motions and I'd almost do it on, and this is where the ego comes in, on autopilot. You know, like I could get everything done, do the sponsor plugs, everyone's kind of satisfied with the job I've done, and then as soon as you do that, you know, something happens in you psychologically where, like, when there are days where it doesn't feel like you're just kind of going through the motions. And I really when every day I was confronted with the commentary box I hadn't ticked, you know, I did so much commentary for just no reason, you know, some 600 viewer Battlefield game, and just to be able to kind of truly cut my teeth, genuinely see how far I can push this, what I can do with it, what mark I can leave on Counter-Strike commentary, FPS commentary, and try and, you know, give it my all and have that whole new open world of improvement. Like, there's so many things. Like, I think there's so many better ways I could have casted that KD in clutch. I've watched it back like 20 times.
You think so?
You know, yeah, dude. I don't know. Like, why am I saying I don't believe it? Shut up. You're not D-Man from 2011. I can't believe it. I can't believe, you know, like, it's natural. That. I couldn't believe it. I genuinely couldn't. But just, you know, I wish, there's always room for improvement. Like, I've got the ending. Like, why am I talking about clearing corners and calling above his years when I could have been talking about the fact that this is a you know, a 1v, saying it's a best of 5. So when a new viewer sees it, saying best of 5 grand final, 6 hours of Counter-Strike, they've only been together, and having all the numbers ready and hitting you with all the reasons that my excitement is justified. Why didn't I have all those to hand? You know, I could have done it better.
I mean, I almost say that's overly critical. I think there's an aspect of commentary where we like it when the commentator gets lost in the moment too. That there's a genuine excitement there. You know, I'm from an era where, you know, what was he called? Fucking Andy Gray. Oh, you beauty! You know, like
yeah, okay.
Like full lost his mind because he just loves Steven Gerrard so much. Or just last night on the UFC, you know, Joe Rogan literally going in the fucking, he walked out of his own body when Usman knocked out Masvidal because it was such an unexpected outcome. And so I think when, sure, it can be bad. I don't think the Canadian clutch is an example of that. I think I think your lack of composure adds to it and doesn't take away.
Yeah, and I say 30 seconds like 4 times. 30 seconds, he's got 30. This is me piecing my brain back together again. Like, wait, is he? Well, so there was a box, and how many did he kill? What's happening here? Is this actually happening? Yeah, it's dude. But the fact that that clutch was so well received, and the, you know, commentary praise that was partnered with that. That's the first time I've believed genuinely, like, holy shit, imagine doing that in a stadium. Like, there's so much more for me. Like, I can look ahead now and have things I aspire to achieve again, which is really
very
cool.
different type of experience as well. You know, because you when you're working with a crowd,
couldn't cast like that. With like that round, I couldn't have casted it like anything like that. I'm fucking whispering at points. You literally wouldn't have heard any of that if we were doing it in an arena. So I guess there has been a perk to that, in the sense that I can, you know, really do my more abstract and avant-garde talking, as opposed to when, you know, your arena casting does get much more visceral and just loud noises.
Let's talk about hierarchy. This is the dirty part of the interview. This is where we start segueing into uncomfortable topics. Don't worry, I'm gonna pull us out of that towards the end. But for now,
okay, cool.
Yeah, I've eased you in.
He's got a ripcord. He's set up a ripcord.
We've made you comfortable. This is how I structure all of my interviews, by the way. I get you comfortable for the first 30 minutes.
Rapport.
Built rapport, exactly. Now. Yeah, exactly. And now I'm going to say, you are going to buy the car. Sign here. So anyway, look, hierarchy. It's the dirty part of what we all do, where we operate in a talent pool where we're all ostensibly friends. We do events with each other. We chop and change. Some people do our job. Some people don't. Sometimes we work alongside. But in our minds, much like the audience, the fans themselves, we do structure a hierarchy in our brains and place ourselves within that. And it informs everything that we do, in terms of what rates we ask for, what our expectations are at an event, whether we do the final or not, little things like that. Is this something that you do yourself, and to what degree does it inform your assessment of your ability? Are you a type of person who will look over at someone else and go, I am objectively better than that person at the same job?
The main encounter I've had with that was with rates. Like, I was always dragging my heels with the other big boys. When it was Anders, Moses, Henry, Chad, you know, the list goes on, Semler, etc. All of that. Like, I was always just maybe 1 breakpoint, 2 breakpoints behind them on my come up and on my rise, which I think, if anything, was more just a motivating factor of feeling, you know, as I've talked about, I have new goals now. That was always something I could kind of look back and say, okay, so I'm still tier 2, you know, in that respect. I'm still being considered tier 2 by the people that hire me, the people that make the decisions and attribute value to what I provide to a broadcast. So that was definitely there, and that was definitely my awareness of that hierarchy. And it was always kind of, you know, even when I worked at ESL, and I had, I won't call out the name, but had a colleague kind of chuckle when he heard my ESL monthly salary and say, dude, I get that in like 3 days, that's crazy. and me being like, yeah, that is kind of crazy actually, because I'm doing everything you're doing. So those were when I was confronted with it, and now I am, I'm in the same band as my colleague, my co-caster. I feel like we the same value is attributed, and we are providing what I would consider to be justified at most of the time premium product that we're being paid for. But yeah, I think it's in terms of the hierarchy beneath that and its unspoken influences, it's really still just that I think the decision making is done based on people's opinion and merit. It doesn't come from us necessarily, but it is still very, it's, of course it's always going to be opinion driven and just how prolific of a profile you've set out for yourself. I think definitely public pressure is a thing as well. We've seen it multiple times, when you have your own personal fan base, and your absence is noted by that fan base. That's like, I think that we've seen multiple instances where people's brand power has swayed the decision making process.
Oh, definitely. So how do you feel about your other talent? The other broadcast talent. Do you keep them at a healthy distance? I think one of the reason I'm going down this road is because there was a lot of camaraderie in the early days among all of us.
Yeah, dude.
And I feel that's definitely dissipated as we've got older and the industry's got bigger.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it a bit before. When I said it felt like work and it used to be like a traveling. It feels like work and it used to be like a traveling circus with my mates. Yeah. Like, I mean, this is exclusively a personal experience, but of course, when all of my especially notable during the void of pandemic, as well as the Jason moving away, Henry moving away, Yanko not working anymore as well as often. Now he's back. All of the people I considered my close friends, my unit that I'd forged friendships with over like 3-4 years of just traveling the world and talking about video games. All of those close connections and the hotel room after parties and the just, playing stupid Jackbox games and having fun, wherever it may be. All of that was gone. And so, I definitely do feel like there's been a shift now because it's the new breed. The new breed are coming up. There isn't as much rapport. I have no problems with Harry and Hugo. Love those guys. We've lived together in a bloody Airbnb gaming house for a couple of months, and we can coexist peacefully. But we are very different humans. I can't have the same conversations I would have with my gang as I would with them. But I think that's just normal social developments. Different people, different strokes, different folks.
Yeah.
But it definitely does feel more like kind of going into the office and stamping in my time card a little more now, as opposed to just kind of cracking jokes with my mates with a camera rolling.
Yeah, and there was also a weird kind of moment. I want to say I felt the shift somewhere in 2016, it was around about then, 2016, 2017. I think is when people started. I think people had realized there was a lot of money in this. There was a lot of status in this. You could be on TV, mainstream TV, which I don't know why that was such an exciting prospect to a lot of people, because Twitch and streaming's the future anyway. But in that moment, there was a lot of fucking tensions and flare-ups, and what had been previously healthy relationships were now kind of poisoned a little bit by all of this newfound potential.
Sure.
And people wanting to maximize their role in what the future looked like. I mean, incredible as it is to say, I mean, even me and Henry, I've known since he was a kid, and we're very good friends, consider him like family. And even me and him had some weird tensions where we didn't talk for a little bit because of miscommunications and everyone else in the peer group being a bunch of gossipy bitches.
The gossipy bitches, yeah, for sure. I'm not, I am really, and this is coming from Henry's mouth, as someone who knows me very well, I'm a very patient person in my relationships, romantic or otherwise, professional as well. I have a lot of patience, and I think it has done me a great virtue in just being able to not be hyper engrossed in the drama aspects of it. Like, I can just say, yeah, but that's their opinion, and I don't need to be influenced by it. Like, I think some people like really want to have a very volatile approach to it, and like, you know, this is good and this is bad, black and white, ones and zeros. My opinion is this, and that means everyone must share the same opinion as I, because I am a speaking from a high point from my castle. You must respect my jurisdiction on anything esports or anything broadcast.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I see, you know, a little bit of that. But it doesn't really get under my skin, and I tend to try and not get involved, but everyone's guilty, aren't they? You know, when something just hits you and your thumbs start wiggling on that Twitter keyboard.
Oh, I mean, fuck.
I've just realized I was preaching to the choir there. Sorry, Rich.
No. Twitter's that's how I use Twitter to sort of express my frustrations.
Yeah.
That's where I go, and that's where I have my arguments now. I don't do it in person, you know.
Do you prefer the kind of the fact that you can always choose, you don't have to reply, as in, like, you know, do you like that fact that you can just stop the conversation when you feel like you've expressed your opinion?
Block someone, right? Just fuck off. You're an idiot. You're an idiot, but it's funny to point out how much of an idiot you are, because you're a super idiot. But always, you're in control of it. And so, you know, I don't think people understand that I use Twitter for catharsis. Essentially, I don't. You know, people really bounce off that. They think Twitter is a window into your soul and who you are as a person.
Is there not an element of that? Have you managed to create the perfect balance where, because I'm still, like, as much as I want to be the person that can just read the negative criticisms and laugh at how stupid their opinion is, and then take the positive stuff and go, yeah, but that's your opinion, man, and not let it boost me up. There is always going to be like a primal response to good words, bad words, and I will always they affect me to a surface level extent. I can't deny that they do.
Yeah, not so much. I mean, like, I've been lied about so much now by this point in my life. You know, I just don't. It's like it's become absurd. You know, I read things about myself that I know aren't true, and I see other people chiming in as if they were true. Yeah. And these people aren't even people who were around. They couldn't have even heard it secondhand. They weren't there at the time. So these people have invented a mythology in their mind, and what can you do? You know, it's like, you know, I just liken it to this, like, you know, did fucking Loki really do all that shit? You know, in Norse mythology, of course he didn't. Yeah. Did Thor really accidentally marry a fucking troll? You know, did he when he was drunk? Who knows? Who fucking knows?
It's a good story to tell, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a good story to say.
Yeah, long after I'm dead, it'll be fucking Richard Lewis. He was the wild man of esports. He choke slammed a Dota player through a table at DreamHack Hell in a Cell 2015 and all this other bullshit. I'm just stuck with that now because the way technology works these days, you can't. The lie spreads way too fast.
I do want to kind of, you know, say that when I've observed that, like, I do have to admit that there is so much fucking. You are like straight up in the trenches of like the worst parts of Twitter, right? Because I admit, by your own actions, you tend to put yourself there at times, right? Course, like in the trenches, fucking right there, swinging lefts and rights. And I think because you're always just every time you stick your head up at that trench, it's like absolute no man's land garbage. That sometimes well-intentioned criticisms can be perceived as just another bullet just missing the helmet.
Sure, I probably am guilty of that. You know, I mean, especially when you take into consideration.
How much shit you've been shoveling and the tone of internet,
exactly. It's very hard to like judge. You know, if like let's say you get 1,000 tweets and 900 of them are just abusive, and 100 of them are trying to be clever or funny, and then within that 100, you've got like maybe 20 that are like genuine, but then they're worded in such a way it looks like the other stuff. And so, you know, I know for a fact I popped off at people who weren't actually saying what I interpreted they were saying. Yeah. But once you kind of locked into that mindset, you know, it's like being I was liking it. You know, them Wild West brawls you used to watch. You know, you'd be there with your grandparents.
Standoffs or a brawl. Okay,
an actual one of the bar brawls. And it's like everyone hits everyone else once, and there would always be a scene in those bar brawls where, like, you know, the cowboy would get tapped on the shoulder, and he'd go to hit whoever it was who tapped him on the shoulder, and it would be his mate, it would be his deputy, and he'd be like, whoa, and he'd be like, all right, hold on a minute. Okay. Yeah. That is what's happening on Twitter every day to me. And so, I keep swinging, and eventually, the deputy does get clipped. You know.
Yeah, fair. That's a perfect analogy. That's a nice one, actually.
So that's how that is
in a nutshell.
But back to you.
Oh yeah, hello.
Yeah, back to you. How guilty are you of sometimes letting the ego get the better of you? Have you ever done anything where, in retrospect, you look back and you think that was, there was no need to make that particular flex, or there was no need to make that decision, or I could have handled that situation better? That it was, it was the ego that got the better of me at that time.
Oof. I mean, there is obviously our initial feud.
Yeah.
Where we had where like I genuinely was just being the insecure and what's the word, forward looking, or trying to develop myself and etc. I'm just going on Twitter and saying I'd like to be so I corrected someone on Twitter. Someone messaged me like, oh yeah, where's Machine? I was like, actually I haven't hosted a major in 2 years. And of course, because you were hosting it, it's so easily seen as like I should be doing this. I should be taken instead of him, and etc. Like those ones where it's like, and I see people do it all the time where the mask slips off and they're like, right, I didn't get enough attention today. I need, hey guys, I'm working hard. I need people to give me affirmations so that I can just go on in this meaningless existence for another day. And I definitely had like, those elements of my fragile ego showed their face, where you just kind of, it's everyone is so transparent, I think, at our level as well, which is why you also sometimes look like you're firing a gun in the brawl, because you can see the other intentions of someone's tweets, because you've been there and you know what it is like to be a figure, and like the whole, I mean, it's an overused buzzword now, but virtue signaling, can be off the charts and people don't even know they're doing it.
Yeah. I think as well, though, to talk about our thing, what that started to sow in my mind, I created a kind of false narrative as well. I have a tendency, because I think I'm a very good reader of people. I have a tendency, like, let's say 99 assessments out of 100 when I'm judging someone. Let's say that's accurate. But then what does that say about the one you get wrong? Well, I don't revisit that, because the assumption is that it must be right like all the others. And so what happened there, I think, between us, which is why, for a while I was a bit childish. I think I intimated a few times on podcasts publicly that you were like an egotist and stuff like this. What that did was it created a narrative in my mind that the Alex I knew and got stranded at airports with and worked with for no money, and sort of came up together with,
rubbed shoulders with,
because I mean, I remember fucking sharing the hotel rooms and fucking even Cologne 2014, we were in that tiny little fucking
shack.
Shack, right? So I in my mind, that guy was dead in that moment.
Right. It was a 1 or a 0.
Yeah, exactly. And it's weird because I criticize binary thinking like all the time. And obviously
hard to catch, though, isn't it?
Yeah, when you get locked in it, I guess. But looking back, it's like with everything that's like happened, you realize, or at least I do, I realize that type of shit was actually like it's super not important. Like I was still being a bit of a drama whore at that time in my life, where it was like I relished the conflict. And now as I've got a little bit older, it's like, why make conflict where there's no need for any? Especially
I can answer to that, because you're really good at conflict. I bet you're a fucking man. I've seen you when you shit on that dude who got the football player wrong. Like that was hilarious. Like you actually, like, you can do conflict better than most, and you probably make a fair buck off your power, your penchant for conflict. So I imagine it's probably quite comfortable to stay in that zone. It's familiar territory. You've got all your tools at your disposal. It's probably nice to stay there.
Yeah, which is, and like I said, I felt terrible about that. The mad thing about things like that is when I pop off at the wrong person and it's just a lapse in my temperament, those things keep me awake at night.
Shit, of course they do, because you are, you're a soft and squidgy human being like all of the rest of us.
I feel terrible about that stuff. Like people don't expect that, because I don't then turn on the stream at 3 a.m. when I'm like racked with guilt.
You're not going to turn your Twitter on, are you? Imagine the response when you do a tweet like, God, I'm feeling really bad about calling that guy a twat yesterday. You imagine the fucking vitriol you'd have to deal with by just admitting you felt bad, remorse.
So you just have to sit there and kind of like process it. But like legitimately, that's not something to say. I actually, those things really do. it's like it leaves a little scar every time you do it, that actually the person I insult comes out of the exchange better because it was completely unnecessary.
Yeah. No, and I mean, to be able to clearly you've already ascended to some levels of introspection to be able to say that out loud and stuff.
Oh, I mean, like the last,
just admitting that you feel bad about it. Like I feel bad. Like whenever I snap, like I had it yesterday. I was doing a wingman with a friend. Just some dude was just chatting shit and beating me, and I just started telling him about his BTEC in sport and just being a complete cunt, you know. And afterwards, you're like, why have I done this? Some kid was having loads of fun, popping heads in a wingman, and I've just tried to make him feel really bad about himself for no reason. And I mean, just it's a common human response, and I think it's a good sign of a healthy brain that you go back and go, actions unwarranted.
Yeah. I mean, you know, but it doesn't stop me doing it again.
No.
You know, it's almost like it's a form of torture. It's
self-destruction, at its highest form.
Yeah. So I mean, look, do you think you changed, or do you think you're the same guy?
I mean, dude, I'm a completely different person in the same way that when the kid that went to university and the kid that left, like the course means nothing, but like those 3 years of like halls and making friends and fucking up friends and starting relationships and fucking up relationships, like completely different person that left university. In the same way, the person that went into esports and the person I've become, like I have had so much time to think that I've like only really recently, but I've been given such a luxury of, time is the biggest resource, blah, blah, blah. Between this job and the fact I have, comfortable disposable income, I have regular, like just 3-4 weeks where there is no hustle and bustle. There is no 9 to 5 followed by a relationship or something to be responsible for. I have so much time to just actually analyze and admittedly overthink. I've recently kind of self-diagnosed myself with some degree of ADD, and I do think that my brain can just run a mile a minute. But it's led me to having a much firmer understanding of myself as every year passes, to the point where I'm not there yet, but I can see a route to inner peace of just being completely fully processed of like who I am, how I want to outwardly present myself, how I want to be, influencing others as best I can.
Yeah, I mean, because I think as well
that
like this is where it gets interesting, like linking it to, like, I think if anything, I think the reason I felt what I felt, that there'd been a shift and you'd become like an egotist, was because actually in the past you had like almost zero preciousness about anything, and I think you actually let a lot of people kind of almost take advantage a little bit. I mean, I don't want to speak ill of anyone that you currently work with, but I think the ESL example is kind of indicative of that. I think, ESL for me didn't necessarily understand what they had with you, and I think you probably didn't understand what you were.
And, oh God, no.
And so you had to develop some ego to protect yourself and maximize your opportunities in the industries. Otherwise, you'd still be working for ESL for not a lot of money. And
it took so much convincing from people whose opinions are respected. Of like, I can think of 2 events back to back. We did like a Barcelona and then a Malmo, right? And where it was like every day, over whether it's sangria or a cold beer, I had my friends saying, dude, you are worth more than this. You can get paid what we're getting paid. You're doing the same jobs as us. You have to just, and I think that was the start of where you marked the ego shift, where I had basically people hammered into me my value and said, you're undervalued. And like, that was me trying to reacclimatize to this new acceptance of, okay, so I'm with the big boys now. And balancing that act of like, I'm good at this with, I'm not, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah. And it's tough, right? Because you definitely needed to do that. I remember telling you needed to do that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I sort of turned around and was like, oh, right.
Oh, he's done it.
Yo, yeah, Alex, you need to get an ego, bro. It's not like, and then it was like, yeah, okay. All right. Then and I'm like, fucking egotist. I kind of feel like, that was a bit shit, really, in retrospect.
Well, I appreciate that you say that, but it was also just terribly mishandled, but by everyone involved. Just because I'm so fucking, I think people need to be just much more comfortable of just express, like, doesn't matter. I'm a very impulsive person, so just sending the message of what you're thinking and how you're feeling tends to be better than not sending anything at all and letting both people's perceived, their perception becoming their reality. You know, it's like my perception of our relationship was like we were never gonna do an Richard Lewis and Machine one-on-one interview. You know, like it sounds absurd if I said to 2017 Alex, you know, I just assumed the bridge was burned, we were just gonna be coexisting peacefully on either sides of the football court. But it's nice. It's exactly those are the perception isn't reality.
Yeah, we've gone through like so much stuff since then, and it's like I don't know. I don't want to have divisive relationships with people that work in esports in general. Like, I mean, you know, I want to get along with everyone that kind of contributes to the space, provided I feel they make a positive contribution, which, you know, I think be insane to suggest that you don't, just because I don't know, I didn't like a tweet. I mean, that's what I criticize people that say they hate me about. You know, you looked at a tweet and you don't like it, and now you say I have no value as a human being, or my content's garbage. So, you know, I definitely could I think with us, what drove that wedge was like, I don't know, it's very hard to kind of perceive your own hypocrisy when it feels so vital that you hold on to the conflict, so you get to paint yourself as some sort of moral victor, you know, down the road. And you realize that's all bollocks. You know, when something really bad happens to you, you look at all of the things where you go, wow, that was fucking, how could I even be annoyed by that in retrospect?
A question for you, if you don't mind. So how has your understanding of your opinion having value developed? Because I remember, and I think for me, you know, I was always the kid that was like, what's your favorite song? Oh, that's mine too. Yeah, I love that genre. Yeah. Oh, what shoes are you wearing? Oh, those are the shoes I should buy. Like that kid in primary school, secondary school, etc. When did you have the real, because you did all your interviews early, right? So I imagine that from a young career age, you started having the realization, my opinion has weight, or my opinion is valued.
My problem has always been not realizing that my opinion carries the weight it does. And a lot of bad stuff stems from that. So for example, you see, you probably didn't realize when you made that tweet that I haven't worked a major in 2 years, that fans of me would interpret that as saying you should be working it instead of me. And then fans of yours would come and attack my fans, and round and round we go, because social media is a fucking poison to the
popularity
human experience.
Contest.
Yeah, exactly. It reduces everything down to engagement.
Ratio. Look what's happened. Ratio. Well, it's all about the numbers now. It's a popularity contest. Who's got more fans?
So my problem has always been that I think of myself very much as the guy who, like, I hold court in a bar when I'm with my friends, and I tell funny stories, and we all have a good time. And that is I like, when I say something in the industry, that's kind of like what I think I'm doing again, but I'm not. And like, I've seen it have profound impacts on people's careers, you know, intimating someone might be a cheat, you know, but you know, which of course everyone else can do it. What you realize is probably better you don't, because of the weight that opinion carries. Same, you know, and organizations. You know, I get involved in spats with orgs. I've had orgs sit down and tell me that thing you said, you know, on your podcast cost us a sponsor, or you know, and so and also just looking at like the way nicknames have stuck. I mean, one of the other big realizations I came to recently was with another UK lad, which was Smooya. You know, he reached out to me, and to me, he's a pro player, and therefore it's within my purview to critique him. In reality, he was a 16, 17-year-old boy, and who looks up to like me and Duncan, because we're working class lads that have, like, you know, come through in the space in the same way in a way he's trying to do. And we're calling him the fucking rat king, and intimating he's a liar and stuff. And it really pissed him off, and simultaneously hurt his feelings. And, you know, like, me and him talked it out, and you just forget that, you know, think of all the nicknames that have emanated from By the Numbers. Think of like me, what I'm talking about now, how I've gone on there and implied you're an egotist or a narcissist. And then probably some people have said that to you based on, you know, what I've implied publicly. So I don't think the stuff I say sticks, despite this overwhelming raft of evidence that it does. And I need to get better with wielding that responsibility.
I'm afraid, Richard, that might be rooted in self-confidence. You just can't believe it. You genuinely can't believe that you have the impact you do.
Yeah.
Because, you know, despite the overwhelming evidence, like there's a lot of parallels here with us, despite regular messages of like, dude, this was amazing. You've literally changed the scene forever. These are all messages you've received, Richard. Like fucking, you know, I'll never forget the fact that you broke that story. I'm aware of this because of you. But then you get the one message like, oh, you strangled someone, you piece of shit, and you're like, oh, everyone thinks I'm a WWE star. It's easier to believe that, you know.
Yeah.
It's easier to believe that shit. It's just that's because our brains are all they're bastards and they're all chemicals and they're against us.
And do you feel like because I know one
imposter
of the things,
syndrome. Oof.
Yeah, one of the things I've come to realize is that if anything, a lot of the decision making process you make is down to the fact that you actually, it's not because you've got an abundance of confidence, it's because you actually have a lack of it.
Yeah, like I know I can do, like I know because I've got so much evidence, like you just said. I know because I've got so much evidence that I can do it. Like the moment before the TI comeback grand finals, I've had a little rehearsal about the pyro, where not to stand, and I know I've got to interview the winning team, but I know if the Chinese team win, there's a fucking translator, and I've got to coordinate that differently. And I'm thinking of all that. The cards there with now sweated on Byro, and I'm shaking a little bit. And then there's a crazy comeback. So I've had 3 hours of this kind of anticipation of like, you're about to do something you've never done before, not really a stage host, but it's TI, and do it well. And I have all of that imposter syndrome. You're gonna fuck this up. What the hell are you doing here? You don't belong here. Like you're not a stage host. Why? I kept saying in my head, you're not a stage host when I'm holding the mic about to do the grand final winner interview. And then as soon as it starts, you know, you blank out, you go into autopilot and you pull it off. In the same way, I'm sure when you've got a story to write, you've got an objective and you just go through the same workflow that you're familiar with, and it just kind of happens naturally. And yeah, I think I regularly deal with those moments of just like self-doubt, but I do feel like that part of that has been a product of my success in the terms of you're just always competing against your inner critic. If you know, my inner critic is an arsehole, but it means that if I'm this is going to sound so depressing, if I'm never happy with the job I've done, then there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, I feel that way. I mean, I think that's the only way, as fucked up as it sounds, like you know, you can never sort of, you know,
peak.
Yeah, you can never sit back and go, right, there it is. You know, look
I'm
at that.
terrified of settling. I'm terrified, you know, the whole concept of resting on your laurels or just like, that's what we talked about with the hosting thing. I think that was the first taste of it I got, where I was just doing events and just, I've got lines I can use, and my segues, I can just make up a silly segue and my job's done. And you start breaking it down into components, and it's like you've looked into the toy factory and it's no longer so fun. I see. Yeah, it just doesn't exist when your inner critic's an arsehole.
I wanted to touch on something. I didn't know where I was going to fit it in, so this is as good a place as any. Sure. I actually felt that when you did go and do those Dota events and ended up at TI, you know, many people consider that like the Super Bowl of esports, just because of the sheer size and number of viewers and the media attention because of the prize pool. I saw lots of examples, I thought, of the Dota talent being a bit snippy and weird with you. And in particular, like what pissed me off, and I don't think we were talking at the time, but I think I did tweet out about it, was when Purge like told you like essentially shut the fuck up on broadcast while he was doing a segment. And I was aghast. I was like, that would just not fly with me. That's a green room argument, like all coming at
chances are.
Yeah, and I think I remember you explaining it by going, because like some people noticed it and were like, wow, Purge was really rude there. I think you diffused the situation by saying, oh, he had there was all weird fucked up noises coming through in his ear, and it was like it was making him terse and tense. But I mean, did you get like, I mean, did the Dota talent embrace you? Because I've worked with a lot of them and they're all swell guys and they all like me.
Dude, yeah, crazy story is that OD Pixel was one of my first childhood friends. We went to the same primary school together.
Wow.
Me and Owen used to go play N64 around his house, just around the corner next to the church. And then I bumped into him at Spoons, and he was like, "Oh, I'm trying to do what you're doing, actually, Alex." So I went home for Christmas, bumped into him at Spoons. He's like, "I'm trying to do what you're doing." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Esports commentary." I was like, "Really?" "Yeah, me and Wakey, like another kid from school." 2 years passed, he's casting TI Grand Finals. Like his come up was huge, and I think I had good vibes with a lot of the Dota guys. Chances are with the Purge thing as well. Especially when you've got the Dota crowd in Counter-Strike, there's a lot more banter. I definitely tried to bring the banter bus to Dota a little bit, like poking fun. I'm just saying, perhaps what you perceived as being Purge being an arsehole, chances are.
Oh no, he definitely was just an arsehole in that moment.
Oh, okay, okay.
It wasn't banter.
No.
But I mean, like I don't know the context of it, and I've seen Thorin do the same thing on a broadcast when he's had like an unbelievable high-pitched screeching noise in his ear or something like that. I've seen him kind of go like, "Well, can someone fix this?" Like while we're on
when you have to call out the production issues, it's like when you try and stay professional for a while, and then you still don't have game sound, and you really just have to break the immersion for everyone. Broadcasts.
Yeah. But I mean, in general, like everyone
generally
over there was
awesome.
nice,
like, dude, I was working with like Day 9. I got to work with him and meet him, and he was a cool character doing his desk hosting. But everyone was super supportive. All of the analysts, eventually we created a bit of rapport. By the time I got to TI, I did a couple of majors beforehand. By the time I got to TI, I was a familiar face who was not afraid to admit when I didn't know something, which saved me a lot of jip, because those guys are proper. It's probably the same as Counter-Strike, just a little more direct. When you can perceive someone's game knowledge is at a certain point and they try and pretend they know more, like it comes across disingenuous and it creates friction. So just being able to put my hands up, in the same way of saying it, if you say it loses its power. I used to be called the fat P word at school. Well, if I introduced myself as the fat P word, it no longer had as much power, So it's the same kind of thing. So if you immediately say it out loud and acknowledge it, like the same thing that's kind of got me through a lot of the charisma category of my hosting is just acknowledging what I don't have before anyone else can, and it loses it endears you to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely used that because I've hosted a number of games where I have including my first ever hosting gig, which was StarCraft. I had no attachment to that game. Had actively said, in 2011 or whatever it was, that I wasn't going to be like the rest of the esports mercenaries and pretend that I've always loved Brood War me, like because people wanted to make money, and bizarrely, by virtue of not doing that, I got offered a job to work in the scene and was very well received. I've still got a lot of time for the StarCraft community. Unfortunately, our relationship between me and the StarCraft 2 community ended on a sour note because I don't think they were ready to hear that basically, WCS was not going to save their scene. It was a disaster and it came too late.
Yeah, and you had to be the bearer of bad news again.
Yeah, I mean, me and Duncan, of course, went on a show. I can't remember which one it was, but it was a Chan Man host one. It could have been Unfiltered, but basically, we were just saying WCS isn't gonna. It's too late. The horse was out the barn.
But no, stop, because that means that your dead, Grim Reaper story about Counter-Strike is going to come true as well. So if you could just stop saying that you were right about WCS.
Yeah,
please
you've read my mind. This is where I wanted to end on, because I think this is voodoo. It's sort of relevant to your interests, because why would you want to be the best casting duo right at the end of time? Like, it's Ragnarok, and you and Chad emerge, and then it's like, yeah, the game's dead though, boys. So well done. Turn the lights out when you fuck off, mate.
Yeah, okay, that's kind of a good fair play.
Yeah. So look, I do think we've got some very real issues, and a big part of it relates to there's a disproportionate importance placed on American orgs in any esport, in the sense that America has the biggest marketing budget, even during COVID. And where we're at now, with everyone having to kind of decamp to Europe, and ESL and the Blast and the other TOs refusing to play ball and create one circuit where everybody has enough time, because no one wants to give up any calendar dates, you're essentially committing the North American teams to 280 days on the road, maybe more. And that, with all the costs that incurs, with all the homesickness that incurs, and as a result, on top of that, combined with the average salary, which was inflated by American orgs, but fair enough, the average salary and the lack of return of investment, you combine all of that, and the average North American org is like, fuck this. But I think if you were to talk about revenue coming into the average league, I think without the North American teams and the North American sponsors, you lose a huge chunk of revenue. And I think it's a matter of time before Complexity and Evil Geniuses, and maybe even Team Liquid, turn around and say, look, enough's enough. We're not going to do this anymore. And I think if those orgs go, I don't know where Counter-Strike ends up.
How much do you attribute the loss of North American CS scene to the pandemic and the Counter-Strike esports ecosystem's response to the pandemic, and how much do you attribute it to the organizations not playing ball with each other?
Like, the pandemic's a factor. Obviously, the hyperbolic thing to do is to sit here and go, well, a pandemic's an excuse, right? And do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I mean, because the reality is it's definitely a factor. I think if the
people had to piece it together again, right? Like they had to try and make something.
Well, look, we'd be having Counter-Strike events in North America. We'd be having LANs in North America. We would have people being able to fly freely around the world and attend events, and then, go home, right? Like,
like if New York happened, the Barclays Center lights up with all of their logos, and all of those fancy sponsors stick around for another year. But instead,
I'll also say for sure there are some organizations that were just wanting to pull the plug anyway. And focus more on the new hot game, which is a lot of these esports orgs, they're almost like influencer hubs rather than, like 100 Thieves is the future model of a North American multi-gaming organization. And it's very antithetical to what we want to do in Europe. Because, it's just the American way. And with Valorant's existence, suddenly you can make that choice. Hey, want to be in a cool FPS that all the kids are going to play? Well, it was Counter-Strike or nothing. Now it's Valorant. That's actually the more popular game in North America, and certainly in other markets as well. Brazil.
My main fear is that is less CS versus Valorant. It's more Valve versus Riot. Like I genuinely don't know. Like due to their kind of inaction, their policy of their public persona and the way they communicate with the public, you just don't. There's so many like we've just got some Microsoft Paint drawn circle man and occasional tweet about patch notes, and then you look at like Valorant, who already have 1 million followers on Twitter, promoting every stream, every challenger with their own custom-made graphics for the bloody up-and-coming 17-year-old from Croatia, and they're pumping all of the storylines, and they're doing it innately through the company. And I fear that yes, you said that you're going to be the best caster doers at the end of times. I don't want that to be the case. I would love to be a part, and that's what you're seeing elements of with my working closer with ESL. I got to be a part of writing the script for their teaser. I'm getting to do kind of I'm trying to have some degree of feeling like I have control over it. They say you should accept the things you cannot change, blah blah blah, serenity prayer. I definitely have tried to put myself in a position where at least it's not going to be, I can't sit there and just go, Valve didn't care and Riot did, and in 5 years' time. And I'd like to think that there is some sort of unified force even if it is going to be broken away in these political divides of just that everyone battling for the whole pie as opposed to agreeing to just take a fucking triangle each.
But the thing that pisses me off is, I mean, first of all, it's always been us. It's always been us in Counter-Strike. Think about CSGO. Like, we don't even have to go back to the old days, 1.6 and Source, and how old in the community efforts that kept that alive. Let's just talk about CSGO. Like, even at the start of the game, remember, it was farmed out to Hidden Path. who was doing all the, beta feedback? Who was distributing the keys?
Fans.
Yeah, it was us. It was us on the fucking front lines. And eventually went back to Valve, and they made all the changes that we did. The esports scene propped up by a handful of TOs and the broadcasts given all this immense value by people who do the commentary and create the content around it. It's like Valve's involvement has been so minimal historically, and now we're at a point where things are really bad, and you can't even wield a fucking Twitter account with 1 million followers in a way that's going to promote the esports side of things.
Question for you. So Riot obviously used their esports side as a marketing tool, right? They've always done it with League of Legends. It's a marketing tool. That's why they justify the budget. That's why Worlds looks as it does. It's because it's a marketing tool, and they can justify it through a marketing budget. Valve clearly doesn't, and it's driven, as it always was, by the community, i.e. modders, i.e. forum posters, i.e. people that wrote Cadred news posts in their boxer shorts. Yep. Anyone who
God
could.
Bless them.
God bless those soldiers. And my question is, how much do you think that like CSGO's demise would be dictated by Valve's apathy? Like, do they have, how much of my worst fears of they've got a business model which they can release a container, will buy enough keys, and it's a lovely little cash cow they'll milk until it keels over. Well, how much of that insecurity is real?
The return on things like cases and stickers and everything is like it's been diminishing over time. It's not like the heyday of 2014, 2015, 2016.
I just had a little birdie that there's some good numbers in the stickers.
I mean,
worse than, it used to be crazy money, didn't it, for the personal player stickers?
Yeah, okay, I think I saw the number of sales for capsules and cases, and I think, while there's been a few little aberrations, spikes in general, it's, you can make that sort of line on it. And so that it's not even a great cash cow to the same degree Dota is. And I don't know, man. I feel like when you say Valve apathy, it's like they tend to not be apathetic when it comes to competition, but if Riot are already breathing down their necks to this degree at this stage, deliberately looking at all the things Valve are doing that piss the community off, and then doing the opposite in their games,
their whole business model.
Coaches. Yeah,
you're right. Yeah. Keep talking. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No. Hey, the more you talk, the better. But the reality is that's where we're at now before they've even built their franchise league or anything else. And yet Valve has had this unbelievable head start. And it's like, I get real tortoise in the hair kind of vibes here. CS has been trundling along, and it can never die, right? And it's the big game, and 20 years, look at the history, look at the heritage. And Riot Games know how to build successful esports and get engagement. And because it's an FPS, no one's looked over at League of Legends and said, okay, if they apply that model to an FPS game, we've got real trouble over here. Valve have just been so used to having it their own way for so long. And
I had that breakthrough recently when I did the LEC.
Yeah,
I did. So I got plugged straight into the Riot Games refined studio framework, and I will tell you now, it's so fucking polished, dude. Like, I sat down in a meeting room, and I watched the show getting built, and it was just like a combination. Now we always say the talent can help, let's help. Like, I saw how they created their input, how the producer used their input to display it visually, how he made a clear workflow for like how these stats are, like, here's what our stats team have got for this week, what do you want to talk about? Okay, we'll refine that. Graphics, I'll tag them, bam. Like, I just watched how the show was built, I watched how it was presented, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, we have to do this all with mercenaries on a shoestring budget, and it's all coming out of weird paths of, like, there's no clear hierarchy, there's no clear delegation, and it's all going to be a clusterfuck. Whereas Riot have got this super streamlined, the same crew every day, same studio, the same producers, it's all working perfectly. And I fear that unless like, honestly, like, just coming back to another point you made, I wanted to say about the young players, like, we're at this break point now where, because I always defended Counter-Strike as like, yeah, anyone can have another esport, but we've got Virtus Pro, this is a team with a 10-year history, etc.
Yep.
I'd be like, yeah, but we can talk about what someone was doing 10 years ago and how he's doing it now in Cologne in front of 10,000 fans. That dialogue doesn't get old, but now unfortunately they did, and it's all going to be bloody frozens of the future, the 17-year-olds who have decided to shoot heads during that and doing their homework from a hotel like Rops, those kids, but they might just look at Valorant now.
It's why it was super important to retain that the sort of next generation of stars that were coming through, guys like Twists go into phase, you want that team to pop off because that's somebody that can be iconic and playing on a good team. We need to keep our Simples. I see Simple playing Valorant more and more. Makes me fucking nervous, dude. Makes me nervous.
I think we've all had the conversation away from the cameras of just how fucking like how much of a blow to Counter-Strike that would be of losing our superstar. Like let Valorant create their own. Like they can have tens. We'll keep Simple.
Yeah, I mean, and they get all the boomers for a year or two. They'll all be in coaching roles once the
slots are added.
Yeah, exactly. And once the kids start getting good at the game. But I mean, this is what I'm saying. I think for the first time, there's a frustration across all of the community, even people like myself. Like historically, I have been so generous to Valve, and I've been a guy that's come out and said, Valve do care, Valve, I'm trying to be the voice of reason, but we're at this tipping point in the esports scene, and I don't think Valve get it. I don't think they realize how profound an impact some of these things that are happening are going to have. Losing an entire continent in the space of 12 months. And then potentially losing the emerging Brazilian market as well.
Yeah.
And then what we didn't penetrate in Asia, we were just starting to make inroads into China.
Yeah, well, isn't the Valorant team all of the ex-CS guys from Asia, and they're like on some 90 win streak, like the whole team that was kind of just starting.
Yeah, I think they went past 100 actually, 100. Yeah, 100 not beaten. Yeah.
So that's the perfect embodiment of the Counter-Strike wasted potential.
Yeah. But so I mean, this is what I mean. It's like there's not one piece that should, if you assess it on its own merits, there's not one piece where you look at it and go, oh, well, that kills Counter-Strike. Because all right, we just don't have any North American Counter-Strike teams. Okay. I mean, it's not even a big market in terms.
Is it gone?
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, it was already, I think it was something like fucked up, like only 3% of players in the world were from NA. It was like a real
which in reflection blows my mind that we had the Dallas and the Barclays Center and we had the Boston Major, we had all of all of the Liquid supporters, the Cloud9 jerseys. Like North America felt pretty damn big for 3%, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think well, as well, it diminished. I mean, look, we were on
Atlanta, the Fox Theater.
We were on mainstream TV, and those orgs are huge anyway, and have fans that'll support the org across multiple games. There was a general uptake for just esports anyway. But yeah, it's like you go look at the actual numbers at any given moment of the amount of players that are on a North American Counter-Strike server. It's thousands. It's not a lot of people playing in North America. ESEA pugs, think about the numbers, how that's gone down to where it's at now. People are moving away from that game in America and doing other things. Meanwhile, and I haven't even talked about Call of Duty. The Call of Duty League has been the one success Activision Blizzard has had. You've got, when Overwatch finally dies its death, you're going to have another influx of pros moving over to Valorant, and then you're going to get an influx of talent and fan base, and that's going to give it a lift. Yeah. I think North America's done. I don't think we win it back even after the pandemic. I mean, unless something crazy happens with the major and the way Valve monetized the game.
Yeah, so we are in agreement that though everyone can have their opinions, everyone can have their favorite TO, and the genuine the answer, the remedy to Counter-Strike's foreseen doom, but a la Richard Lewis, is some sort of unification. If we could stop the vilification of the people that are desperately trying to keep Counter-Strike alive as well, make no mistake, have your favorites, but without ESL and without Blast right now, Counter-Strike Esports is dead. You've got a couple of random tournaments from webcams, and we just wave goodbye to any semblance of like the events. Like ESL definitely has struggled with the online transition more than others. Like they just genuinely have not been able to hit the ground running in the same way that the strong suits of LAN.
Yeah.
Like they could do it, they could run a mean event, they could organize the seats and the fans and the regulations, and they were the bureaucracy. Germans were good at bureaucracy, right? They'll get all the stamps on the papers, and they'll get all the people in the seats, and they'll do all the lights, and everything will be safe. You know what I'm saying? Like that was ESL strong suit. Having a smooth online broadcast clearly hasn't been.
Yeah.
But like we just can't sit there and just being like, oh, this free entertainment sucks dicks, and then you're like, what? Oh, my game died. Oh, boycott ESL though.
Yeah, there's definitely a happy medium that the fans haven't got round to, and
we'll get there.
Well, I mean, maybe we don't, frankly, and maybe it is too late. You know, I mean, again, it's off on a tangent, but I think we saw this a lot with the Cloud9 vitriol. Obviously, I know that will have been something you will have been hyper aware of living with Henry, but you know that felt so disproportionate compared to what they were trying to do. And you know, people had a lot of cognitive dissonance about that. They were like, yeah, we want Leaf and Zeppa to and Floppy, we want those guys from Chaos to all have an opportunity. Well, Cloud9 gave an opportunity to two of them, and then the same fans that thought it was good they had an opportunity were basically booing Cloud9 for giving him that opportunity and saying this isn't a Colossus.
It's exactly the kind of, you know, it's the kind of people that have this, like they have this obsession with like hindsight, and they let like they seem to have like nostalgia with hindsight. Like it's almost orgasmic for them to be able to sit there and go, I knew that decision that's turned out bad was going to turn out bad. And you're like, well, you didn't, did you? You maybe you knew that there was a potential, and now you're just trying to reap that payoff of like, I saw this coming from a mile off. I think a lot of people, you're sitting at home, you've got nothing to do, there's no streams on today, and everyone just wants a little bit of dopamine. You know, you're a bit of an old boomer, you don't use TikTok, you do have Twitter, Counter-Strike's your football, so you want something to say, you want to contribute, you want to feel valued for a moment, and everyone does it. But like making a thread saying let's all laugh at Henry, and it just being upvoted, you know, and just being like this kind of weird, absurd, false reality where we're just going to take all the negatives and leave all the positives, or see all of the intention and just be critical of the outcome. It's not critical thinking. And obviously, what are we doing expecting social media to be critical thinking, to be honest? I mean, I think it could be, I feel like there is a distinct lack of unity. You know, when I do a League of Legends broadcast, the whole community is so universally like positive. Like I don't know what they've done, but they've nurtured this kind of a different space. It's a notable difference in the feedback I receive and the way I'm perceived, in comparison to when I go to Counter-Strike and I'm like giving my all. I'm like dedicating my life to this fucking game I want to see succeed, and I think it's got incredible, you know, it's got intricacies and beauty in it that it can't be found elsewhere. But people are still kind of ready to grab their pitchforks, and everyone wants a team, you know, a team to support outside of the teams. Everyone wants to have an opinion and defend it. We're all like little playground politics, I guess. It's still there in Counter-Strike. I don't know why. It's just a product of the people we attract.
You know, do you have any suggestions then about something, like if there was one thing that you could sort of like just change now to make a positive contribution and get us away from, you know, the potential of the esports side of the game dying out? What's the one thing you would put in place?
I genuinely think it comes from us getting closer and closer to having a LEC style broadcast. Not just let me explain myself before that's overframed. But having it so that we can so clearly say it can come from whoever, whatever, but to be able to say, you know, do the hero building properly, have the actual stories that we know are being told and that we get to kind of, you know, point you in the direction of in a throwaway sentence in a 10-minute death segment. Have those stories told to a fucking UFC MMA level. I watched like the McGregor card when I was lying in bed, whenever it was, a while ago, when he came back, and like I didn't know anything about these people, but with a 30-second, well-structured and scripted thing, I now knew who she was, what she was fighting for, why she doesn't like her, and why every punch she throws is exciting. And we just don't have that level of, you know, we can put so much more polish on this. Like some of the personalities under the surface, if I got to just I don't know, fuck around on a jet ski with whoever it may be, the kind of the type of person I can show the world. Obviously I'm biased because I can see the impact we can make from the broadcast standpoint, because that's all I fucking do. So I'm sure there's other strings that should be pulled, but for me, to save Counter-Strike, we just need to have a show that everyone is on, like everyone can enjoy, whether you're a brand new viewer or you're like a seasoned vet. I think E-League was on its way at times.
I think E-League was the best esports broadcast at that
attempt.
time. For the 2 years that we really did it. And then it is LEC hands down now. I mean,
but it was so tight. E-League, we had and Bardolph was sitting there in a wetsuit. We still had personality, but we were still rigid and tight, and it was well lit. The characters were being portrayed, and you started seeing them as like proper stars. Like, oh, that's Rush shooting an Arby's sandwich. Holy shit, that's my guy. I'm a fan of him. I'm even more of a fan of him because it's been justified as being an okay person to support because Arby's are supporting him, blah blah blah. I'm just giving you dumb examples of how humans work, but I think that's where we've got to do it, man. I think that because I know, and you've,
but that would need Valve to sort of,
which is why this apathetic Valve scares me.
Yeah,
because do they, if they just are just happy to watch it kind of fade away. I don't know what their metrics are for success in Counter-Strike and how much of an esports component there even is in that, if it is just concurrent player base, which I am using now as a little crutch to stop my mental breakdown. Like, oh well, it's 980,000 concurrent, so we're rocking 1 million a day. I can say that and kind of feel okay, but I don't know. I fear that this game does need some sort of unification. We are now, it's no longer Counter-Strike against ourselves. We were always just this little bickering top dog who could bicker because we had no competition. But Valorant's real competition. I think everyone's aware of it to varying extents, and if we just keep getting drudged down in this swamp of like surface level bullshit, we're never going to be able to create a product that actually does Counter-Strike justice for some more longevity, I should say. I mean, come on. I think this game can live on. Don't tell me there's a poetic side of you, Richard. There is a poetic side of you that sees this game.
For me, I'll have a much better idea about whether the decline can be arrested or not after the major.
Fair. That's a fair one. There's so much uncertainty around that right now, though. I don't even know. I mean, can we assume it's happening? Has PGL done any tweets? They just said it's happening and then they stopped, right?
I'm gonna say yes. I mean, look, I know obviously whenever you start talking about the pandemic, I don't know how that became a political divisive issue, like, but whatever, So whenever you bring up pandemic stuff, people go fucking crazy. But whatever. Yeah. I'm gonna just say it anyway. I think where we're at in terms of the pandemic response. Vaccines being rolled out, Sweden's approach to it, which has been, criticized and praised in equal measure in different areas. I think basically by November, which is like 6 months away.
Yeah,
I think
fair game.
Yeah, I think we're in a good place, and there's plenty of causes for optimism, and so I think it's definitely going to go ahead. And I think there's going to be so much tension alleviated in that moment, to have teams on LAN, to have teams going through the RMR process, and we're all going to have a good idea about who's ranked where, but this is LAN now, and it's the big crowd. Many of these teams will be their first time doing it in this kind of environment. We're going to have, the best commentators, and like if we get that, all those viral moments that Counter-Strike always gets, because it's a really easy game to grasp, and you can show a clip of an amazing play to someone who hasn't played the game, and they go, holy shit, that's fucking insane, and they understand instinctively why it's insane. If we get those moments, we can have cause for celebration and cause for optimism as we go into 2022. If it's fraught with technical problems, if there are delays, if the games are shit and all the teams who have been great online play like ass, if we don't fill out the stadium and it's like 800 people because people are still afraid of the pandemic and want to stay at home, and let's also just call it, and if politics for some reason plays a process plays a role in the hiring process, and some people who should be working a major don't work the major, I think if all of that happens, we just pack it up. We're going to end up like StarCraft 2.
Yeah, just holding on to what we had.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, okay. Well, that's actually given me a nice little bit of a goal now to set a little line in the sand to draw to gauge how much of my alarm bells I'm ringing for Counter-Strike. But I think you're onto something. I think you're right. If we don't fuck up the launch, imagine if it was like a fucking a launch of a beta game. Like Battalion butchered their entire launch, and it could have been so much more than it was, because they basically had 14,000 people all.
I don't
think
I've ever seen a game die that quick.
Oh man, rest in peace. Like, I'm a COD 2, COD 4 nerd as well, so know I was gagging for some Car 98 bolt action life, but. Yeah, just the power of like perception. You're right. All eyes are on Counter-Strike. Everyone's cognizant that Valorant exists while the major's going on. Probably a lot of that fan base tunes in to see what this is, what it's about. And if you have the like Gambit heroic newcomers Vertipro stories, all like they're manifesting into what they were supposed to be in this hyperbolic. What's the time chamber called? It's not hyperbolic. But
the hyper.
I'll look it up. Blah, 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 something time chamber, the pandemic
it's
chamber.
A hyperbolic time chamber. Yeah.
Oh my god, I did it.
Yeah,
okay, hyperbolic time chamber.
Known as the room of spirit.
And they all start swinging and knocking all the old boys on their ass. We're like, this is it. Like when we were like, oh, the Brazilian era is here, as SK Gaming did nonsense in front of the fans. Doing that again with like some intense good Counter-Strike, and it's all, you're right, no tech delays. The crowd are actually there. All of the clips are actually executed well. That it could be a revival. I think that's a fair summary. Okay, well, it is still Doomsday, Richard, but you've given me something to look forward to.
Are you going to be at the major, do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I assume like it's going to be a rather last minute jobby. It's only, what is it now? Yeah, I would hope so. I would hope that they don't pull any punches and we get all of, in the same way we have the old and the new. Like, there are so many names. Like, if I was creating a list, it would be a long one of like people that have been putting in the effort and have made notable whether it's improvements or developments or shifts. Get all of the guard back together again and just celebrate the game. Treat it like a celebration of Counter-Strike, like it used to be, especially off the back of this whole pandemic. I think it would be such a missed opportunity if we didn't just put literally the whole army of people that want this game to succeed in front of a microphone and camera.
Yeah, I certainly hope you are. I mean, I also recently made a case. I think like Scrawny and Launders, they need to be certainly in consideration. I think it's really tough because like the like you say, the major, it's about picking the best people and it being a celebration. There's no room for sort of sentiment, oh, you should get one. And I always hate that. I hate it with TI when talent who don't get picked go on Twitter and go, I will not be working just to let you all know. Like, no one gives a fuck, bro. You're not entitled to be hired. It's like I made it very clear. I said, like, I'll come back if you want me to host the fucking thing, but if you don't worry about it. I'll be watching at home with a cold beer and cheering PGL on and wanting PGL to win.
Cheering Counter-Strike on at this point.
Exactly, yeah, because the pressure PGL are under is unprecedented. This is a major like no other. And if we end up with like a Face It London, as I said, we all go home. But man, if we end up with a fucking MLG Columbus, like, whoa, fuck me.
Give me one of those, man.
Or a Boston, even.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, well, I wasn't at Krakow, but they did that, like that Circle Stadium. The games were a bit like, unfortunately, we didn't get our poetic Counter-Strike on the.
That was the one that was full of upsets.
Yeah, well, it was. Oh, here they go! It's Gambit and Immortals.
Gambit and Immortals. Fuck.
Whoa!
The viewership.
Who saw this coming?
Yeah,
God, exactly. That's another one. I want to defend that just quickly while we have a platform. The people that are saying like, oh lol, look at the viewership when it's like a Gambit heroic and it's not like a Fnatic, Cloud9, whatever the name brands are. That's a really bad example, but. I think that those are the fans that like we can afford to lose if we can start to gain people that can appreciate what they're seeing. Like the way Gambit are playing now, it's like it should be, anyone that's played Counter-Strike realized how hard it is, super satisfying to watch, and the fact that they're beating the old guard should be something that's celebrating and not tuning, like if you tune out of the grand final because the team that beat your favorite team are there instead, it's like, well, you don't care about the game, then you can support them and just stay that linear kind of fandom. I think it's really, it would be a shame if Counter-Strike gets lost just because the name you became a fan of isn't there anymore, because this, like, the shit these guys are putting down now is like, it's literally a year of just them being nerds as a unit of 5. We should be really getting wet for that.
People like Heroic and Gambit need to be absolutely
if they do it at LAN, Rich, oh my god.
Your problem you've got is they're overshadowed by bigger teams in their respective countries. Navi obviously the CIS team of choice, and it's still Astralis, even with Device leaving. Although Heroic are, and Gambit, Heroic are the best team in Denmark and Gambit are the best team in CIS. But the fandoms kind of go a long way, and I know when you work these events from a organizational perspective, you're always kind of hoping that one of the big fandoms makes it into the final, not necessarily on merit. Everyone wants old MIBR to be in the final. Zero chance of that because they were fucking terrible. But that's what you want. That's what you pray for. You wanted Cloud9 at Boston. That saved the whole event essentially. So yeah, I mean, it's a shame that these orgs aren't getting the respect they deserve. But esports fans don't work like normal sports fans. You're not given a team essentially at birth by virtue of your parents or where you live, and you stick with that team through thick and thin. No, you can support multiple teams. You like that player, you follow that player around. People don't do that in sports. Imagine being an Alan Shearer fan. And it's like, right, okay, I liked him when he was at Southampton. I'm a Southampton fan. Oh, he's a Blackburn, and I'm a Blackburn. I'm a Blackburn fan. All right, he's gone to Newcastle. Right, I'm a Newcastle fan now. That would be fucking. That's so weird from a sports viewpoint. Yet people do that in esports all the time.
Yeah, and especially when you consider the fact that being a fan of, like, this only enhances or encourages my point of, we have to get better at storytelling, because you like you said, you're not just going to be a fan of one player, but it's very easy to make you a fan of that fighter in a one-on-one UFC combat. But if we've just got a little bit about Hobbit, we tried it, and admittedly we're still working out the workflow, just sitting down in front of camera, cross-cut some plays with us talking about him, it's referred to as hero building. But just having it so that everyone, when Hobbit hits those 30 heads against Astralis, can appreciate it a bit better, and maybe at the end of it be like, oh, I'm a Hobbit fan now.
But here's something I would do if it was me. I would flip the focus. So I would make it, this is Gambit, this storied team. They won a major. Then they lost players and disappeared. They picked up a bunch of youngsters. Everyone said it was terrible. Here we are a year later with the youngsters, and they're back in the game. And I would, the danger when you make, like you say, the hero building, the danger with that is, like I say, people worship the player, not the orgs. And that makes them more inclined to move around. It's when you watch a sports broadcast, say, like, I think the Carabao Cup's going on now, it's like Man City, Tottenham. They talk about the imperious, all conquering. Can they do a quadruple? Man City, Meanwhile, this is Tottenham's, last opportunity for a trophy. They've got a stand-in manager. Mourinho's left. Yeah. Gareth Bale's been in the press saying we play more attacking now. Mourinho was too negative. Having slide digs. They're the stories you tell. And
100%.
Yeah, and I think I think that's where we probably need to do a better job in esports.
Yeah, and the closest I got to that was when I was writing this obsession script, where I was like trying to think about, like, how do you give a team personality, because not all of them have it, right? Like we've had it at times, the Virtus Plow, and there was grounds for that, and we love telling that story, and then we pushed it into almost a caricature of themselves, and it always happens. But yeah, I think hero building for teams, and it's going to be a process when you've got these newer teams where it was a while ago, we didn't have personality for Heroic. Now, in my mind, I paint them as these, they're at the whim of this new breed of calling Cadian, making last second, 20-second rotate calls. They're playing a whole and trying to add words to that so everyone can understand and take it in a bite-sized chunk is like a super new frontier. And I'm sure you've actually done a lot of that. You'd be a perfect person to brainstorm off of, because when you're writing, that's your only way to describe teams. You know, you have to add personality to your descriptions of them. I hadn't done that so often as a commentator or host.
Yeah, it's very easy to get caught up because it's the players you see, you know, perform, right? So, you know, Duncan's good with that too. He
used the scripting for Cologne at one point, and it was all bangers. Yeah,
they were all great. So look, we're coming up to the 2 hour mark. So we went into a nice little rabbit hole. But just before we wrap up, obviously, I always end these shows by asking where people are going to see you next. You know, what's next on the horizon? Because you know, some people might be new or get a new perspective on you. They might decide that following you on Twitter is suddenly a good idea, or they want to check out your work. So what are you going to be doing next? Is it a DreamHack you've got coming up?
DreamHack Masters, a last little foray of Counter-Strike marathon we've been running. So hope, like, me and Chad are just going to try and end strong here. Because we know people are going to be sick of us. We've been on the airwaves a lot, like in terms of the first half of the year. So a well-needed break for us and for the community. I've got 4 weeks off in Malta. I'm going to go and just completely kick back, hope the sun's up a bit, spend some time with Hank and Chad, and just fully unplug. Desperately try and not open social media for those little hits. And then I'm doing some League of Legends stuff. I've agreed, so I'm scratching my hosting itch. And
you are going to go and host some stuff over there?
Yeah, I've been doing it like one or two trips a year for the last 2 years of like guest hosting. And I work with Quickshot, you know him from way back, right? He's been around the block. Yeah, so Trevor and I have a good rapport, and he's cool with me kind of tagging in, and I get to kind of come in and be this, you know, take a bit of a takeover, as if you will. Like, I get to be the ignorant British guy who does weird skits and is ignorant but entertaining, and I get to live that kind of fantasy for a while. So being able to juxtapose that with trying to be a good Counter-Strike commentator and still getting to be a host, I'm living quite a fantasy right now.
Well, I mean, then the next question is, when do we see you in Valorant?
Well, this is, I don't think I can afford, like, I've been given such an amazing path of, like, I was always the guy that wanted to try and commentate and try and show everyone what I can do, and now I've got that opportunity. I need to grab the ball by the horns, no matter how much the Grim Reaper may be on my tail. Do what I can. I want to be able to leave a mark, you know, like, I would love for my commentary to be taken to a point where I can be considered a staple of Counter-Strike commentary. You know, I've taken my first steps in that direction, but I know that there's more to be done in that respect, and I'll ride that opportunity as much as I can.
Yeah,
chase that dragon, listen, and do my League of Legends.
You're only young, you know. You got another
pushing.
No, dude, at
30,
at 27, mate. Like, you've got like, I feel it definitely is a time where you need to be on camera less. I don't know what the cutoff point is, but I think because what we do is such a young industry, like, you know, I'm knocking on the door of 40 now, and so I'm kind of thinking, like, it does get a bit weird when a balding dude with a gray beard is talking about, hey, everyone, watch this. Okay. Watch this car kick a football. All right. You know.
Okay, so then, Richard, then your pivot is when Counter-Strike is being saved after an amazing major, you're the guy that's writing all the scripts and shit that I'm delivering and getting all emotional about. Boom, Counter-Strike is saved. We all love Hobbit. Okay.
Yeah, well, I am gonna do some documentaries. Deserto, again, the pandemic fucked everyone's dreams, right? But like, they were building a studio. I think they were gonna get a place in London, and basically I was gonna go on the high speed rail,
like major
Birmingham.
style.
So we'd be doing this in a Joe Rogan style setting.
Yeah, man.
And then on the fucking time off and the downtime, I'd be like booking flights to the events or flying people over so we could film those. You know, here's a curtain, here's a 2-shot, talking head. You know, do you remember when Fifth Lauren went 9 and 44 or whatever and this stuff? You know?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'll be doing that, I think, next year, and being on camera less. But you've got a long time, mate. You've got, like you say, 13 years of potential. Like, I think, like Golden Boy, I think you'll end up on mainstream television at some point in your career.
I would love the idea of like pivoting to being able to do like some sort of, because I think my biggest strong suit is being able to It's the same. It's like a tool that can be used for good or evil, right? The power of understanding how to present yourself in front of someone else in order to make them comfortable. You did it for the first 30 minutes of this interview, right? You know, like we're all slightly aware of our capabilities in that respect. But I think that's something I can really do. So, you know, like Graham Norton has 3 random human beings on a sofa at the same time, and he manages to make them all have good vibes. Maybe a little less camp, maybe not that less camp, but I feel like that's
you have similar
wardrobes.
Actually,
fucking hell.
As it happens, like you do. You do dress the same.
I'll cross my legs with the desert boot and I'll wiggle a card as camp as I can. But I genuinely believe that's something I think I could succeed in. I'd love to be able to do it in an esports space, though, right? You know, like actually bring out all these characters. I don't know if it's on the horizons, but I do not have any like aspirations to leave this while I can. Like right now, I still feel like what's the expression I always regurgitate? Make hay while the sun shines. Like the sun has been shining on me for a long period of time now, and of course I have many fears of it just all collapsing and the bubble popping at every moment, every turn for the corner. But so far so good, and I'm just going to keep chasing it while the sun shines.
All right, mate. Well, look, that's a great point to end on. As always, thanks for being so gracious with your time, even though I know it was a Sunday and we were both doing fuck all anyway.
Yeah, we're just gonna play video games. So
yeah, so I'll definitely let you get back to that. Have a good DreamHack. Actually, good teams out there as well. So
thank you.
You and Chad, I'm sure, are going to kill it, and enjoy your rest and holiday. And to everyone watching, there it is, the great Alex Machine Richardson, a man of many talents, and still working on them. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. It will be on your screen, and show him some love. A great guy, and someone who isn't an egotist. I want to go on the record and say that now.
He's done it.
Yeah, just an introspective guy trying to make esports a better place. And we need more of those right now, more now than ever. That was the Richard Lewis Show. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next episode.